I was not expecting this. It's another day working in the garage, and we're working on the 62 AMC Rambler again. We're gonna fire up the straight 6 inside this beast, and we are going to torque the head bolts, and we are going to adjust the valves for lash. There's some very specific reasons why we got to do this to this engine. I'll explain all that in just a second. But if you like classic car lore and just need interesting things with cars that you don't see anymore these days, you're gonna like this. This is our 196 cubic inch Nash power plant, and the design of this engine was way outdated by the time this car was even built in '62, which is kind of funny. I'm gonna rattle off some previous videos here in Freeman's garage. Something just hit the floor. I'll have to find out what that is in a second. I'm gonna rattle off some previous videos on Freeman's garage here, just real quick, and I'll put them all, they'll all be in the video description. You can watch them later after this video if you want. But I just gotta point some stuff out, kinda so you know where we're at here. We rebuilt this carburetor in a video. We rebuilt that dual action fuel pump in a video. We spruced up our cooling system in a video, and we ended up with a leak. We're not sure if that's going to be a permanent leak or if it's going to fix itself, if you know what I'm saying. So that could be an issue today. And here's why I just mentioned all that to you. There's some challenges facing us here in today's video. All of our work, the meat and potatoes of this video, is all going to take place under this valve cover. We're going to remove it, and our work's all going to be under there. But we need to get the engine fired up and then running and sitting here and idling for a few minutes to get it to operating temperature so that we can properly do our head bolts and our valves. But the challenges are, well, that leak could mess things up for us. And the carburetor we rebuilt, we haven't had the engine running for more than just a few seconds on it, so we're not 100% sure that our rebuild is good to go. I'm sure it is, but it hasn't been proven yet, so that's got to be confirmed. And our dual action fuel pump that we rebuilt, well, we haven't really proven that our rebuild job works. We kind of did in the previous video, but looking back on it, I don't really think we had the engine running long enough to get all the air out of our rebuilt pump. So I'm not 100% sure that we were really actually pumping. But the other thing is, the final challenge is the fuel source. The factory tank is pretty darn clean, and we could hook up to it and put some gas in it. But even though it's pretty clean, I'd like to run an inline filter just in case, but that's not something that we're going to be able to do today. So our fuel source is going to be a gas can under the hood. Let's get cracking on this because I cannot wait, and I'll give you all the deets on why we got to do this in a second here, but let's get all this. We don't need that in here. That's probably just going to smolder on the exhaust. I took the radiator cap off because that way if we have the engine running long enough here today for the thermostat to open, our coolant level should go down, and I would like to take that opportunity to add some more coolant in to top it off. That's something that we weren't able to do in the previous videos where we refurbished our cooling system. In this fuel line that's attached to our rebuilt fuel pump, we put this on there in a previous video. We'll just stick that right in there. And this is our jumper wire to get, oh, I gotta reconnect that. Our jumper wire to get power from the battery to the ignition coil, which we have this going on because we've never found a key for this car yet. All right, we'll get this battery hooked up here to our cables, and then I think we'll hook up I connected the other end of this to the coil, and this end will go to the positive terminal on our battery. Once we hook all that up, we'll set up the remote starter switch, and then we'll put some gas down the carburetor and we'll try to get it running long enough here. Probably have to try to fill the float bowl so we can get some, you know, as many seconds of runtime as possible to help that fuel pump get all the air worked out of it and start pumping out of that gas can. If you just put a little splash of gas down the throat of the carburetor, it'll run for a few seconds, but if you fill the float bowl up, you could get about 30 seconds or so out of it, and that could be all it needs to work that air out. We're gonna treat this car right because we love it so, and we're gonna change the oil and filter before we fire it up, because we really want this at operating temperature before we torque our head bolts and adjust our valves. I mean, if we plan on this car transporting our butts to the Rambler Museum in Colorado, we better take good care of her. And when we got the engine up at operating temperature, assuming that the fuel pump works properly and the carburetor and everything, and she sits here and idles for us, we will torque the head bolts first and then do the lash. Here's the interesting and neat thing about torquing these head bolts. The reason why we're doing it is because, believe it or not, the factory service manual, this is straight from the horse's mouth, AMC, American Motors Corporation. Check the head bolt torque every 4,000 miles. Retorque the head bolts every 8,000 miles. The book calls for 58 to 62 foot-pounds, and we'll slip right into the rocking chair and go with 60. I'm pretty sure that this procedure is due to a poorly designed cylinder head as far as cooling goes. I mean, there's no water jackets in between the cylinders. And in 62, this engine still shared some of the same design aspects as its predecessor, the flathead. Over the years, people figured out some modifications to improve the cooling system here, but for right now, we're going with what we got because we want to get this car on the road and see what our temp gauge says before we start modifying things. If we do modify this cooling system, you'll be the first one to know because it's all going to be documented right here, of course, on video. Let's get the oil drain out of this 196, and then we'll get our fresh oil and filter in, which there's some neat things about this filter. It's kind of a different filter than usual, different oiling system than usual, and there's something neat about that right here as well. And these steel lines under here I'll tell you about when we get there. But let's get that oil drained, because once we get through all this, then we fire it up. This car sits really low. I don't think I'm even going to be able to get under here all the way. I brought a 13/16 and a 7/8. Whoa, it's not a 7/8? Wow, this is an even bigger plug than I thought it was going to be. That's huge. 13/16 is way too small. Alright, I'll be back. I was not expecting that. Alright, so the next size up, we got an inch and then 1 1/16. So let's try the inch. I guess maybe I could squeeze under here further. Yeah, that's an inch. You know, that's just kind of funny because when 98% of what you do is with Chevrolet, you get so used to, you know, the majority of what you do being all the same. You know what kind of a vehicle I haven't had in a long time in the fleet? Is a Dodge. What was the last Dodge I had? I think it was a, I think it was a 1978 or 9 3/4 ton pickup truck, an Adventurer. Okay, I was just about to say, all right, let's see if I can get my hand out of the way with the plug before getting hit by oil. But that was another thing I didn't expect. The threads on this plug are maybe a little more than a 1/4 inch. And they're not long at all. I guess maybe about a 1/2 inch. A lot shorter than on a Chevrolet. Now, first thought, you would think there wasn't that much oil that came out of here. But there's quite a bit. It's a big opening. It came out real fast. All right, we'll let that drip and drain out all the way. And then we'll put the plug right back in, but while it's draining, we'll clean this up. Yeah, that's a big old plug. I got 2 songs playing in my head right now. They're mixing together. He's up there in Alaska, digging in the cold, cold ground. That's mixing with Send My Love to Rose. Well, now the songs in my head changed again. Now I'm hearing, if you ain't ever caught a rabbit, then you ain't no friend of mine. You said you were high class, but that was just a lie. Alrighty then. We get to attempt to remove an oil filter that has been on this car since at least 1975. In 1962, this car did not come with an oil filter. This is an option, or you could get it later after the fact. Say you bought this car used, you could get the setup to put an oil filter on here and do it yourself or have a dealer do it. One of the reasons why they did it like that was because non-detergent oils were still common at that time, and so the idea was that the sludge would settle down on the bottom of the oil pan, and then every so often you could take the oil pan off and clean the sludge out. Therefore, an oil filtration system is not as necessary. And this was supposed to be a cheap car. So by not having a filter set up on here, that just keeps the cost down. And I'll tell you a little bit about the type of oiling system that this is when we take this filter out of the box. But first, let's see if we can do it. This filter's been on here since at least 1975. Let's go with bare hands. Yeah. Who do I think I am? Lou Ferrigno? Okay. Yeah, alright. I feel like my shoulders are gonna rip right off my body. Let's not do that. Might as well take a second to point out the nice dent in the top of this oil filter. If you work on this car, you'll notice that it's the natural place to put your hand when you lean in here, and it fits the palm just perfect. Alright, let's see if we can do it with the wrench. And actually, just to gauge the toughness of this, let's start by doing it up here at the end. We would have more, well, you know, I'd say we'd have an easier time getting it off if we went closer to the base, but let's just see what we can do up top here. Okay, it is turning, but I'd rather not create a big disaster here, so let's just go down lower and get the job done. You're not getting this kind of action anywhere else, folks. Nowhere else. It's going right for a brand new heater hose. I'd rather keep oil off of brand new hoses and off the generator. It's always nice when the Give Your All shirt makes a guest appearance. This hole in the center of our oil filter is a lot smaller than what you'll see on most, if not dang near all, modern automotive application filters. And on our new filter, it's the same small hole like this. You'll see that in a second. And the reason why everything is so small is because this is a partial flow oil filtration system. The partial flow is pretty much outdated and obsolete, you could say, even by 1962. Some AMC models and some manufacturers had already moved on to good filtration systems. This is a pre-war engine design, and during World War II, a lot of improvements were made with durability and oil filtration and just engine technology in general out of necessity to save the world. But engines like this, post-war, they held on to their pre-war notions. A full flow system will filter, about 80% or so of the oil that's passing through the system, and a partial flow like this will filter about 20%. That doesn't mean that it's not doing a good job filtering the oil. It might just take longer. And finding and settling on this filter for this car, 51050, took me a lot of research, a lot of digging, a lot of sniffing around. So if you're in a position where you got a 196 like this you brought home and you're working on and you're wondering about oil filter, well, this is what I settled on. I want to show you this. This filter says replace with type P3 oil filter, PTAC3. There's more than one filter today that you can cross-reference that P3 over to. Our Wix 51050 is one of them. If you want to run a Fram, PB50 will work for you. I threw that little extra turkey tidbit at you just in case you are actually doing what I'm doing or what I've already done and have already figured out for you. You got the information now, and hopefully it'll help you get your car out on the road and we can try to outnumber those modern foreign jobs. And these filters, they do not have an anti-drain back valve, so they don't hold oil in them after shutdown. I'm okay with it all draining out because, okay, the filter sits like this, and on this car, on this engine, after the oil filter is our steel lines down here, and they go down into the crankcase. So there's nothing that needs to be lubricated after the filter. After the filter, it just goes back into the crankcase. So if you shut the engine down and this oil drains out, it's just going to go right into the crankcase, and then it's all there for startup. And as you saw with this filter here, this filter actually is holding, feels pretty heavy, so I'm sure in the filter element is just, absorbed oil. But it's not like there isn't any oil at all left in here after shutting it down. This is where I get my kicks. This is the type of stuff that I love. Get some clean oil, put it on our seal, like that. And now we'll thread on our partial flow oil filter. And this oil filter, you're not going to find this on the shelf at the parts store. Well, not most parts stores anyways. Where you'll see this oil filter a lot is on an application like a reefer, on a refrigerated reefer trailer, or maybe some forklifts. today these filters are primarily used in commercial applications. We're gonna go about there. It's just about as tight as it'll get by hand, and then we're gonna go a little bit more just like this, just by hand. We're gonna line it up to where the brand of the filter is right here, so that way it looks cooler. Did you know that Wix was founded in an abandoned cotton gin? Isn't that neat? Kind of. Do you have any idea how long I've been waiting to put that filter on? This thing's just been burning a hole on the shelf. That is what I call satisfaction. Unlike Mick Jagger, I can get satisfaction in the form of auto parts. Now that's a real dipstick. That's no patsy-watsy, flimsy-whimsy little thing. Look at that thing. Little tiny car for the day. This is not a small car, but in the raging world of gas-guzzling land yachts, this was a compact car. So small car, but ginormous dipstick. Now before you blow a gasket, this is not what you think it is. It's actually this heavy-duty 1540 diesel oil here. I run it in most all my old flat tappet engines, and why some of it is in these random bottles is because I had a big, huge 2-gallon jug that, well, I'll have to tell you the story later some other time, but basically what happened is I pulled the 2-gallon jug of oil when I shouldn't have, and the jug got punctured and sliced by a piece of barbed wire. I'll have to tell you later. These bottles are pretty full, so this is actually going to be a smidgen over 2 quarts. Okay, this is this is way too full. That's an accident waiting to happen. I'm going to pour some of this into a quart jug and then get the rest in the car. We need 5. We need a total of 5 quarts. I know what you're thinking. This guy is highly educated. Well, we better check the oil. I put 3 bottles in, but since they were overfilled, should probably play it safe here, because we do not want to overfill the engine or we'll be draining it. Looks like we need to put in about 1 to 2 more quarts. Gotta love it. I'm loving it. Oh, that went into the oil pan full of used oil. That's swell. We are a little bit over full, which that's fine because the oil filter and the lines are empty. Fill the float bowl with fuel. And then we're finally going to fire this thing up. Wait, hold on. Let me try that again. We're gonna fill this float bowl up with fuel, and then we're gonna fire this thing up. We're gonna use this little filter that when we got this car, it was sitting right there. Make sure it's nice and clean. This is a unique little filter. I wonder if some guy was trying to get this car running, and he went in the house and ripped through his kid's bedroom and got into the science kit. This is all just gonna spill everywhere. Let's just say that when I was a child, there was a lot of heirlooms that somehow went missing from the kitchen and ended up in the garage. You know, I was holding on to the perfect piece of hose for the longest time, and then just the other day, I threw it away. And I knew I was making a mistake when I did it, but for some reason I kept doing it. Threw it away. What is going on with the music in my head today? Now I'm hearing Little Red Corvette. Alright, Mr. Rambler, I think for you, you want to go attach to the green wire, right? Alright, positive, negative, jumper wire. As soon as we hook this up, then we're hot to the ignition. Okay, I'm pretty sure the car is not in gear and gonna end up in the kitchen. Pretty sure about it. This is a pretty big deal because we're gonna test out a lot of stuff here, but all right. Let's see if we can get this fuel pump pumping and the car sitting here idling. Get it warmed up. Hopefully our cooling system doesn't leak. And if we can get this thing warmed up, then we'll take the valve cover off. We'll torque the head bolts and we will set the valves for lash. All right, here we go. Completely expected. A little better connection there. Uh-oh. There we go. Just needed the ground a little tighter. All right, see what happens. Okay, let's keep going. Let's get that pump primed. Are we about there? Is that transmission fluid hitting the ground? That's all kinds of stuff hitting the ground. Error. Well, that's water right there. That wouldn't be my biggest concern, although that could shut us down. But I want to make sure that there is not engine oil. If it's transmission fluid, that's fine because I'm pretty sure the vent on the transmission is clogged because it's puked out before when we've fired up the car in here. And it's common for it to do that. It's some of the most putrid tranny fluid I've ever seen.
and smelt.
You know what? I want to check something. I want to pull the dipstick for the transmission. Now the engine should be running and idling in the transmission in park to get, you know, an accurate reading of the level. I just want to get a taste of what's in there other than what came out on the ground. Yeah, whatever's in there is pretty putrid. I'm wondering if we shouldn't drop the transmission pan and service the thing before running it anymore. Let's disconnect the power that we have going to our coil. We don't want to burn up any ignition points, just leaving everything sitting there all charged up. You know what scares me? Is the water on the ground, because I don't see where the leak is. It does not look like it's leaking on the forward side of the firewall. The challenge is if we're just gonna dump all of our expensive antifreeze on the ground and empty the system in order to get the main job done, we're going backwards. So we gotta figure this out. So if we go underneath here and look, right there is where it's coming out and hitting the ground. So it's gotta be back in here, down inside there. And it doesn't look like it's wet around these connections, so it must be further down in there. Well, let's see if anything's wet inside the car. Yep, the floorboard's wet. Right there. So did it come down behind the carpet or did it drip from up above? I've been rooting around and I can't figure it out right now. Just gonna come right out and tell you. It's possible there's a hose or connection up underneath the dash that I'm not aware of that's bad and needs to be replaced, but I highly doubt that there's hot water being piped underneath the dashboard. And it is possible that the heater core could be leaking, but I doubt that we would get water right there. I guess it's possible though. But if you see that hose right there, right in the center of the screen, I believe that is just a drain for the cowl. There's two other ones I'll show you. They're on the other side of the firewall. There is a cowl drain right there. And then there's one right here. And then the one we looked at under the dashboard, I believe it's a cowl drain. It exits somewhere back here. Now let's look at this heater hose situation or coolant flow situation from a satellite view here. So this is our heater box. That's our blower motor. Okay, that's our fan. And then our heater core is back here. And these are our two heater core connections here, in and are out. Now, we are pumping water from the water pump, okay, through this hose and into the heater core. And then it comes out of the heater core and goes through this hose here, okay, and then that goes back into there, and then it looks like it's coming back out and then into there. But what I don't understand, and I can't wait to figure this out because this is exciting, it'll be learning something new, and I think this is where a leak might be coming from, is what is going on back in here. This aluminum piece, where our heater hoses are connecting to. Excuse me for a second. I'm trying to get some light in here for you. So there's this aluminum piece back there, this fitting, and both of these heater hoses, they tie into it. But does it go anywhere? That's what I'm wondering. There we go, that's a little bit better. See how it goes, it's capped off on the end on the right side, your right. And then on the end on your left, that goes into the firewall, but is that a dead end and it just goes into the firewall there? Is that just how it's secured in place? You know what I'm saying is let's back up again. Let's keep all this going in one shot here. So our water comes, I'm thinking out loud. We're pumping water from the water pump through this line. Okay, it's going into the heater core, going all through there, right, through the cores. And then it's coming back out in this hose, okay? Which is now going into that piece. And then if it's blocked up, is it going somewhere in between the, down inside there? And maybe going this way or something, and it's leaking back there, there's a rotten hose back there? Or is it just turning around and coming right back through this hose and then going in here? Now my assumption is that it's just turning around, but what would be the point of that? Why would it go over there and then back here? Why wouldn't it just come from right here and just go into here? Right? Like just a basic Chevrolet setup. I got an idea. Let's try this. Let's fire the engine back up so we can get the water circulating again. And you get in the car, stick your head up underneath the dashboard, watch the firewall and the floorboard, watch for water coming down, and try to spot where it's coming from. Stick your fingers up in there, get your fingers wet if you need to, and I'm going to watch for leaks out here, and maybe we can pinpoint where it's coming from. I got one more idea that could help us get through this challenge, but after we try this, I'll tell you what it is. So let's just worry about this for right now. So man your battle stations. Do you see anything in there? It's all over the floor out here. Seriously. It was gushing? Holy cow. I'm gonna come look. Holy Cleveland. Look at that. Okay. Let's analyze this now. It looks like it's pouring right out of the bottom of that. If you follow this cable here, it goes up to, and there you go, I just saw it move. It goes up to here. This right there, which is, excuse all the shaky camera and bumping around with the lights and stuff. This is raw, real action. This ain't no cable television program, folks. High temp defrost. Okay, that's your controls. Your heater controls. There's one on this side too. I'm not sure if these are... Oh, these are These connectors are separate. That one's not moving, but it could just be broke. I'm not sure yet, but let's go back under the hood. Oh, you know what? This is neat. I'm learning something new here. This is cool. Well, it's not cool that we might have to rip a whole bunch of stuff apart, but check this out. So this whole time, because that is in that corner and it goes in, you know, I've just been kind of, I don't know what the right words are, assuming or just naturally thinking that, you know, when I come down here and look or go under the dashboard, I'm thinking, like I'm just naturally thinking it's further up, you know, into this region. And I just realized that if you look at it, it really only is about, goes into about right here. So, well, here, let me explain a little bit better if we come around this way. So I've been kind of thinking, or looking way up into that corner. I didn't realize that that connection is actually right there. It all lines up right there. It even lines right up with the control and the cable. So I just realized, and as always, fry me in the comments if it was pretty obvious to you and not to me. But I just realized that all of this lines up, and that this right here is the back side of this. It's on off right now, which means it's probably closed, huh? And then now we just opened it. I saw a little bit drip down. So what I'm thinking right now in my head is the portion of this giddy up leaking, well, no, what I'm thinking is it the metal components that make up this unit here, this piece on the inside and the piece on the other side, is that what's leaking, or is it our hoses? I doubt that it's our hoses because, okay, I'm looking at the little bit of water down in there. Yeah, it doesn't look like it's the hoses. I think they're on there tight and the clamps are good. You know, none of this has anything to do with whether or not any of this is functioning properly, so to speak, because whether this is open or closed, it shouldn't be leaking, right? So I was not expecting this. Well, we need to make a decision here, because diving into fixing that is going to open up a whole nother can of worms. So here's the decision that we have to make right now. If we rip that piece out under there and it's either cracked or it needs an O-ring or a gasket or something like that, you know there's no way we're getting that today for a car like this. And I'm only 2 men and I have a child that needs me, which means I have a time limit. So do we rip things apart inside the car and on this side here and shoot for the 0.001% chance that we could fix it here somewhat shortly? What are the odds of that? Or do we disconnect this hose here, disconnect it from the heater core end, and pop this off and connect that hose to here? So then that way we are water pump straight back into the engine, and the heater core and that piece there is completely separated, and we won't be pushing any water through there. We'll just be recirculating it through the water jackets and the engine block and the cylinder head. If we did that, we could march on and get the engine warmed up to operating temperature, and then check and torque our head bolts and do our valve lash and accomplish the job that we set out to do. But on the other hand, is that worth the time and resources? Because if we're going to bypass the heater core, we got to disconnect hoses, we'll lose more coolant. We've lost enough already. We got to add some because we don't want this engine to overheat while we're sitting here and coolant's not free. And we are going to actually fix all this properly anyways because winter's right around the corner. So we're going to want a little bit of, heat in the cabin, especially if we're talking about going to the Rambler Museum in Colorado. So if we bypass this right now, we're just going to have to rip it all apart again anyways. Well, I just made the decision to call it. We either fix it right or we don't fix it at all. I don't think it's worth doing all this backwards stuff just to get the head bolts torqued and the lash set. I think we should just fix it right the first time, and you're gonna see this car here in Freeman's garage again within a week of the video you're watching right now being posted for you, because we're not slowing down on this project. We're pushing through. I wish that leak wouldn't have happened, but don't fret, Fraulein, we're not slowing down on the car. We're getting this thing back on the road as fast as we possibly can so that we can go ramble. Ramble on. Brake parts are coming in the mail. I'm gonna start to prepare for us to use the factory gas tank, so that's coming soon. On a positive note, we got fresh oil in the engine, we got a fresh filter. The fuel pump was definitely pumping. I think it was just shutting down after so many seconds because we just need to do a little bit of adjustment on the carburetor, set up the throttle and whatnot. So we did accomplish something, and the goal is at least one video a week with this Rambler until it's back on the road. And even then, after it's back on the road, it still needs to get cleaned up, polished, schnazzied. I was not expecting that leak at all, but it's all right. We're gonna get through it. I'm sending you to another video with this car to watch next. There's a couple up on the screen for you right now. And I appreciate you watching, and we'll see you very soon.